As someone who's been in the mortgage business for almost 2 decades, I was shocked when I read this article and saw that almost 90% of home buyers regret their first purchase. Now look, there's a lot of crazy things going on in the economy right now. Interest rates are high, inventory's low, people are making decisions based off FOMO, and what's happening is a lot of them are regretting and having buyer's remorse. We're going to jump into why these mistakes are being made, how to avoid them, so you can make a better decision if you're in the market to purchase a home in the next year. I'm going to share the 5 regrets people have when buying their home, and we're going to cover each one by one, in detail, so you can avoid making those same mistakes.
I have the buyer's remorse.
So let's review all the reasons people regret buying their first home. And I was actually surprised to see the first one, which is the location. 27% said regret the location. And ironically, everything that people talk about with real estate is location, location, location. You talk to a realtor, they say buy in the right location. You talk to your parents, they say buy in the right location. How are so many people regretting the location they bought their first home? It actually kind of doesn't make sense. So why is this happening? So I've been a mortgage lender for almost 20 years. I've helped over 5,000 people buy homes, refinance homes. And I've had that call 6 months after closing. Justin, listen, we want to move. We don't like where we're at right now. What are the next steps? And so I've thought about this. There's 3 things that come to mind. The first reason is when people start their home search, they're very focused on the type of home they want. They're looking at the bed bath count, the size. They're looking at the garage and the outdoor space. They have this checklist of all their needs, right? And what happens is when that first-time home buyer gets pre-approved, they realize that they can't always afford what they want, where they want. So what happens is the realtor perhaps starts opening that geographic footprint, or maybe they go online and they start opening that search and they're looking a little bit further out. And before you know it, they're a few miles away from their prime location when they find the property they want. And they prioritize the needs over the location, but they love the house. It checks all the boxes. Fast forward, they purchase the home. 3-6 months go by. One day they wake up and they realize like they're just not happy, right? And I've seen this play out. So when I'm talking to clients that are actively looking, I go, look, you have to have a needs list, a must-have, and you have to have a wants list. You might not get everything on your wants list, but don't compromise location for needs and wants. You got to find this balance where you get everything you need and maybe a little bit of what you want without compromising the location that's conducive and convenient to your lifestyle. The second trap I see people falling into, and this one's tricky because no one's a fortune teller, so follow me here. There are always up-and-coming neighborhoods, right? So let's use Chicago for an example. You got these long-standing, high-value, high-quality neighborhoods that aren't going to really appreciate much more, but they're always going to hold their value. But they're expensive. And then you got these adjacent neighborhoods where developers are building 3 flats and, there's new construction homes, for example. And what happens is we start speculating that these adjacent neighborhoods are going to rise in property value. They're going to build schools and parks and Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. And if you build it, they will come. And a lot of buyers right now, they don't want to pay a premium price. They want to buy in an area where there's some run up in equity. They want to buy in an area where in 5 to 7 years when they sell, they make 10, 15, 20, even 30% on their money. So what happens is they're speculating, they're following the advice, and maybe they're looking at data, but this is what I've seen play out. They buy a property, let's say a mile or even a couple blocks west of the main street where all the good stuff is on the east side. And a couple weeks go by, not so bad. A couple months go by, things are a little dicey. 6 months go by, they're literally scared to walk outside at night and take their garbage out in the alley because of the guy that's hanging out there. Here's my point. Speculation will sometimes result in good opportunity, and it will sometimes lead to a lot of regret. So here's the deal. If you want to take that gamble and buy in an up-and-coming neighborhood that has potential, I'm not saying don't do it. What I'm saying is you have to be ready for a little bit of turbulence, and you kind of have to have some thick skin and be a resilient home buyer. What I mean is if walking tree-lined streets at night with your baby in the stroller is what you want, that might not be the neighborhood for you.
I really hate this neighborhood.
All I'm saying is you have to look at the pros and the cons and make a decision that you feel good about. And the last circumstance where people actually end up in a bad location, and this kind of all played out during COVID, right? Like you're at home, you can't go anywhere, you're on Instagram, you're watching TV, and you're like, man, I'd love to live in Florida, or you know what? I could totally do a house in the mountains, or hey, honey, why don't we just, buy some farmland, get some chickens, have our own eggs, and just live off the land, off the grid, right? And listen, a lot of people did that. Hell, I did that. I moved from Chicago to Florida. Now, luckily we're happy, but here's what I'm seeing. 6 months to a year goes by and that farm ain't working out. You don't know a damn thing about chickens and the eggs aren't hatching, right? Or you move down to Florida and you hate the humidity. You step outside and there's sweat dripping down your head. Now, I bought a lot of dry fit and Lululemon to combat that, but a lot of people can't handle it. Or you just move somewhere far away. You miss your family. You miss your friends. You realize that it's 30 to 45 minutes to get to the grocery store or pick up your dry cleaning, and the inconveniences start to outweigh that kind of majestic vision we had. And look, life is short. You got to take an adventure. And if you feel it in your gut, you make the decision. But what I'm finding is a lot of people that moved away because they could work remote and try something new are coming right back to where they started. Now, the second highest regret homebuyers had, and 26% of homebuyers mentioned this, is living next to bad neighbors. So look, I know it's difficult to fully vet the neighbors, right? And walk around the neighborhood and say hello to everybody, especially if you live in a big city or big community. But what you can do is, number one, I recommend is think about your own lifestyle. What do you do for a living? What time do you wake up? Do you have kids? What time do they go to bed? What time do you go to bed? Are you a night owl or are you an early riser? All these things are going to help you process what type of neighborhood you want to be in some regard, because what you can do is you can walk the area at different times of the day, morning, noon, and evening. You can cruise the area at different times of the week, right? Weekdays and weeknights. And after a little bit of due diligence, you can get some type of pulse on the environment and on the surrounding houses. One hack you can also do, and I've actually done this before, is I walked the area and I went and introduced myself. I said, hey, Mr. So-and-so, nice to meet you. I'm new to the neighborhood. I just wanted to say hello. And I wanted to get a vibe and kind of understand what the different people were like. Were they older, younger? Did they have kids? I got 2 kids, so I wanted to be in an area and I wanted to find out if there were any young families. So listen, that may or may not be comfortable for you, but it's definitely something you could try. And also, if you're buying in a condo, there are definitely a few things you want to do just to mitigate any risk, right? Number one is you got to find out who runs the HOA. Is it self-managed by people in the building, or is it ran by a huge company, right? From there, you want to figure out a way to connect or understand the dynamics of the building. In other words, are there a lot of people that own? Are there a lot of people that rent? If there are a lot of renters, do they allow Airbnbs, right? With Airbnbs, there's people coming in and coming out. They could be having parties all the time. Might not be conducive for your lifestyle. The other piece of advice I want to give you now, this is especially if you like quiet evenings and just very serene lifestyle, you never want to be in a unit that has really thin ceilings with someone above you. And I know this is kind of a difficult thing, and you're probably thinking, well, how do I know if the ceilings? Ask the inspector, ask the realtor. And honestly, you can figure out a way to be in your unit, have someone go to the unit above you and walk with their shoes on. I'm telling you, if you buy a condo in a unit where you can hear every single step the floor above you takes, you're going to hate life.
Everybody in the USA hates their stupid neighbor.
So the third regret at 25% of buyers is buying in a high interest rate market. Now listen, you can't control the rates. I can't control the rates. You know, it is what it is. But here's the deal. You don't have to take the prevailing rate. And here's what I mean. There are different strategies and there are creative solutions that a lot of lenders have access to that would allow you to lower the interest rate and then lower your payment. So here's a perfect example. Last month, I had a young couple that found a beautiful home. It'd been on the market for about 45 days because it was priced a little too high. They wanted to negotiate the price down 10 to 15 grand. So we're running the numbers. I'm kind of going through a payment scenario with them. And what I pointed out was lowering the price 10 to 15 grand. We're looking at somewhere between a $70 to $100 monthly payment. And they were kind of surprised to hear that. I said, hey, let's do this instead. Instead of lowering the price, let's ask for a $10,000 to $15,000 seller credit. And what we'll do is we'll take that credit and we'll buy down your interest rate. So at the time, interest rates were around 7.5%. I suggested a 2-1 buy down where the rate was 2% lower in year 1 and 1% lower in year 2. This strategy lowered their payment about $300 a month in the first year and about $175 in the second year. And the goal is to help them refinance within 2 years once rates come down, hopefully. Now, here's the deal. You may or may not fully understand that explanation. The point is there are strategies out there that creative lenders, such as myself, understand and have access to where we can help you get a lower payment. And just because the rate is here doesn't mean you have to take it. And here's the last thing about high interest rates. No one's twisting your arm to buy.
Buy me! Not now, house.
If you don't feel comfortable buying at a high interest rate, or you don't feel comfortable walking through these strategies, now, you definitely want to get some insight, do some research, talk to some people, right? Learn and get some education around it. But if you don't feel comfortable, don't buy. Everything's cyclical. Rates go up, they come down. Maybe now's not the time. So the fourth reason homebuyers regret buying a home at 22% are the expensive mortgages. Now, interest rates is a part of this, but let me unpack that for you. 2 common scenarios I see quite a bit. The first is, a young couple or a young individual renting and their lease is up in, let's call it 60 days. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, maybe I'll just buy a home. So they start looking on Zillow, they start looking on Redfin, they don't do their research, they don't listen to family and friends, they're browsing, they find a home, and literally they show up 24 hours later, they meet a random realtor they've never met before, and they think they want to buy a home. Remember, You don't live in the price. You live in the payment. And let me break down what that means. You have a mortgage payment. You have property taxes. You have homeowners insurance. You might have PMI if you don't put 20% down. And there's also HOAs if it's a condo or a townhome. Statistically, property taxes are higher than they've ever been, and homeowners insurance is rising faster than anyone has ever seen it in decades. So you really have to understand what the mortgage payment's going to be in relation to your income before you pull the trigger and emotionally just feel like it's time to buy a home because my lease is up. And the second scenario that I see, which is actually very common to the first, happens to seasoned buyers. These are people that have already owned and currently own. What they're doing is they're moving to a different city or location. And again, they're underestimating the taxes and insurance. Let's talk about Florida, for example. Let's say you live in Chicago and you own a home. Your insurance per year is somewhere between $1,500 to $1,800 a year on an average size home. Now, if you want to buy a home for a similar price in Florida, you're probably thinking my taxes and my insurance are going to be similar. They are not. If you come down to Florida and you buy a home anywhere near the water, you're paying $10,000 to $15,000 a year in homeowners insurance. That's like a 7 to 10x. So that's going to drastically increase your monthly payment. The thing is, people are getting FOMO right now. They want to buy. They see things on the news and the media. Slow down. Slow down. Look at your budget. Talk to a mortgage lender. Talk to an insurance agent. Get pre-approved, and let's crawl before we run. Okay, I don't want people getting buyer's remorse, getting all excited, packing their stuff up, getting a moving truck, and literally shipping their items across the country. 3 days before closing, they're going to freak out when they get the final payment estimates because everything moves so quick. And once that dust settles, it doesn't feel good to be in a position that financially you know you cannot sustain. And the last reason people regret buying their home at 20%, so 1 out of 5 people have this regret, is they outgrow their home too quickly and then they got to move. So here's what that looks like. A lot of young millennial and Gen Z buyers, they don't put enough thought into what the next 3, 5, or 7 years of their life looks like. For example, now listen, I know you don't know when you're going to meet the right person, right? And I know you don't always know when you're going to start a family, and sometimes it's unexpected. But the process of thinking about your life in the next 3 to 5 years and literally stopping and going, what could my life look like in 5 years? Will I have the same job? Will I be with the same partner? Do I want to have a family? Will I want to be in this city, right? And again, sometimes you don't know, but thinking about that will bring different dynamic into your decision-making process, and it will help you make a better decision. Here's what people don't understand about the economics and the money when you buy and you sell. I'm going to use Chicago for an example. As a buyer, you have to budget about 3% of the purchase price for closing costs. As a seller, you have to budget around 7% of the sale price for closing costs. If you don't live in that home long enough to pay down the balance and build some equity, you're going to pay 3% when you buy. You're going to get hit with 7% on the way out because you got to cover all these different fees as a seller. You're going to lose money. So think about your timeline. Think about where you might be in 5 years and understand the math it costs to buy and the math it costs to sell so you're prepared financially. So those were the 5 most common regrets millennials have after buying their first home. The article also identifies some of the mistakes that people have made, which led them to feeling that regret. So let's jump into those right now. So the first mistake a lot of millennials are making that lead them to regretting that home purchase is paying more than the list price. Statistically, 79% of millennials will still pay over list price to win the house in a high interest rate market. I personally think this comes down to FOMO, and it comes down to emotion. We have to slow down. We have to think about our finances. We have to think about our budget, and we have to look out a couple years on the horizon and really evaluate financially, does this make sense? Now listen, if mom and dad are stroking a check and they're giving you the money, God bless America. But if it's coming out of your pocket, slow down, put the emotion to the side, and think about your budget. The second mistake millennials have made per the article is not putting 20% down. Now listen, as a mortgage lender, I can tell you that most millennials do not put 20% down. The essence here is putting more money down decreases your payment. So it really stems to budget. You have to put enough money down to get your payment comfortable. Don't just think you're going to make more money. Don't just think things will work out. We have to think about the budget. How much money do we have now? What are the payments going to be? And does this make sense for our finances? So if you do want to buy a home, but you don't want this really high mortgage payment, and you know you want to put 20% down, but you don't have it right now, it's going to take some sacrifices, and it's going to take adjusting the timeline a little bit. We have to focus on saving more, spending less, and building up towards a savings goal. So maybe in 12 to 18 months, you're ready to buy the home that you want with 20% down, so the payments fit your budget. Another reason for regret, according to the article, is buying home sight unseen. Now, this might sound crazy, but I'm telling you, this was very common during the height of the pandemic because people were moving across the country from city to city, and there was such FOMO, there was such a mad dash to find the home before it got, picked up off the market that they'd see it on Zillow or Redfin. their realtor that they found locally would just FaceTime and walk around the property, and they had to make a split decision that day or else the home would be gone the following day. So I get the reason behind it. I understand the emotion and the timing, but what happens is you move, you have no idea about the neighborhood, you don't know if you like your neighbors, and you're just not even sure if it's the right home for you because the emotion led you to make such an irrational decision. So I get it. Timing is important. And in some cases, this might be the only way that you have a shot to buy that home. All I'm saying is you have to really think about the risks and the downside if this is not the right home for you. The next mistake people are making that leads them to a lot of regret after buying that home is purchasing the fixer-upper. I mean, listen, you're not Chip, you're not Joanna, this is not HGTV. I'm telling you, it's not what it looks like. Buying a home with mold and asbestos, buying a home that has wallpaper and carpeting and smells like cigarettes and you just have no idea what's under those boards. What was that? What makes you think as a first-time home buyer that you're equipped and that you have the skills to renovate a home? Now listen, 1 out of 50 of you watching this are in construction or a contractor or you do some roofing. Fine. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the other 49 people that have zero, literally zero, and this is me too, that have zero skills when it comes to doing a DIY project. I am not equipped to fix a home. I am not equipped to do a bathroom. I am not equipped to change plumbing, electric, and you're not either. Let's all take a deep breath, okay? And ask yourself this question. By buying a less expensive home that costs a lot of money and time to fix up, are you really saving money? Why not just buy the home that's already ready to go if you can afford it and just pay a little bit more per month? That's how I think about it. But if you can't pay a little bit more per month, do you have the cash for the renovation, for the repairs, for the supplies, the material? Do you know contractors? I don't think people really think this through. It sounds shiny and fun, and I'm going to renovate it and make a bunch of money when I sell it. I'm telling you, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. 80% of people that buy a fixer-upper regret it. It costs more. It takes longer. They live through construction, and they wish they never did it. And the last piece of oversight that leads to regret when millennials buy their home is just not being financially prepared and really understanding and processing their debts and their assets and their liabilities. Here's what I mean. Credit card rates are at an all-time high. Credit card balances are at an all-time high. Savings accounts are at an all-time low. The average car payment is somewhere between $800 and $1,000 a month. People got student loans. Think about that. Now, some people are very, very budgeted and prudent and don't have that type of scenario, but a lot of people do. And just because you think you can afford a mortgage payment in addition to your other debt doesn't mean you can. And here's the deal. What I've realized is most people don't understand what a healthy mortgage payment is as it relates to their income. It's called your debt to income ratio. How much of your income is absorbed by your payments? They only think about that mortgage payment. They're not taking into account the other expenses that I just mentioned, in addition to living their life, like going out, going to dinner, traveling, buying things you like. And the other mistake as it relates to budgeting and financial readiness is when you say yes to a higher mortgage payment, you say no to something else. And for most people, what they're saying no to is saving and investing for their future. If you're 25, 28, 30 years old, don't max out your monthly expenses. Taper down your budget, buy a home with a payment that fits your needs, or continue renting, and make sure you can continue saving so that when you look up in 10, 15, 20 years, you can give yourself a pat on the back because you have a bunch of money saved up and you're not drowning in credit card debt like a lot of the country is right now. So we talked about a lot of stats and data and mistakes and just regrets people have when they buy a home. And what I boil it down to as a solution is slow down, remove the emotion, stop listening to the media, do your research. Don't rush into this process. It is a big financial commitment. Know your numbers. Talk to a few mortgage lenders. Get pre-approved. Drive around neighborhoods and just be patient. This is not a decision you make on the fly because there are long-term financial consequences that tie in to this bad decision. Slow down. So I hope you found some valuable information here to help you make a better decision. If you're still watching and you do want to buy a home, because listen, I think it's a good idea if it makes sense financially, and you need someone in your corner to help you think through the numbers, to help you strategize so you can make a better financial decision, look, my team and I would be honored to help you. My full-time job is a mortgage lender. I've helped over 5,000 families purchase, invest, and refinance nationwide. If you have questions, if you want to run your numbers, or just get an educated opinion, drop me a line by clicking the link below. My team and I will schedule a one-on-one with you and will help you get some good information to make a better decision.